The day was bright, and the air was filled with the soft sounds of laughter and chatter from people arriving at the music academy. The building stood tall with its polished floors and grand entrance, welcoming everyone who had come to watch a special piano masterclass. Inside, the large hall was already buzzing with excitement. Chairs were neatly arranged, and at the front, a shiny black grand piano gleamed under the warm lights. The famous pianist, known for playing difficult pieces that left audiences in awe, was preparing to perform. Among the crowd, a young black boy stood quietly near the back. He was wearing a simple shirt and worn-out shoes. His clothes were nothing like the fine outfits most of the guests had on, but he didn't care about that. His eyes were wide with wonder, and his small hands fiddled nervously with a crumpled notebook he held close. Music had always been his world. Even though he didn't have many resources, he spent hours every day practicing on a small second-hand keyboard at home. Today, he had snuck away from his chores to watch this masterclass, hoping to catch a glimpse of greatness. The boy's heart raced as he watched the pianist walk to the piano. The man moved with confidence, his fingers stretching across the keys like they belonged to him. The audience fell silent, all eyes fixed on the grand piano and the musician who seemed to carry magic in his hands. The boy stepped a little closer, straining to hear the soft tuning notes as the pianist prepared for the first piece. As the pianist played, the room filled with rich, flowing sounds that seemed to dance in the air. The boy's eyes sparkled, and he felt a strange mix of admiration and longing. He imagined himself sitting there, his fingers moving across the keys, creating music that could make people feel every emotion. He knew his skills were limited compared to the pianist, but the thought didn't scare him. It made him dream bigger. Around him, the audience was focused and respectful. Some leaned forward, eager to catch every note. Others closed their eyes, letting the music wash over them. But the boy noticed something different in himself. He wasn't just listening. He was feeling the music in his chest, imagining the vibration of the keys beneath his fingers, and remembering all the hours he had spent practicing alone. Every mistake he had made, every note he had struggled with had brought him to this moment. The pianist finished the first piece, and the audience erupted in polite applause. The boy clapped too, though softly, careful not to draw attention to himself. He wanted to be seen and unnoticed at the same time. He wanted to soak in every detail of the performance without anyone judging him. As the pianist prepared for the next piece, the boy's curiosity grew. He watched how the man positioned his hands, how he breathed between notes, and how his fingers seemed to float effortlessly. Suddenly, a small voice inside the boy's head whispered a daring thought. What if he could play too? He had never performed in front of anyone outside his small room at home. The idea seemed impossible, and yet, it excited him more than anything he had ever imagined. He glanced around, noticing the seriousness on the faces of the adults. He felt tiny and out of place, but the music had given him courage. Maybe, just maybe, he could ask to try. He shuffled a little closer to the piano, his heart thumping loudly in his chest. The pianist's hands danced over the keys, producing a melody so complex it made the boy gasp inwardly. He remembered all the pieces he had learned, every scale and chord, and felt a strange confidence building inside him. It wasn't arrogance. It was hope. He had spent years loving music, even when no one around him seemed to notice. And now, here he was, in the presence of someone who had mastered what he dreamed of mastering one day. Time seemed to slow as the pianist finished the second piece. The applause echoed through the hall, and the boy felt a warmth in his chest. It was the kind of feeling that comes from being completely alive in a moment you have waited for your whole life. He took a deep breath and, without thinking too much about the reactions, he raised his hands slightly and whispered, almost to himself, "Can I try?" For a moment there was silence. The pianist paused, his fingers hovering over the keys. The audience looked around, some confused, others surprised. Who was this boy daring to ask such a question? The boy's heart pounded harder, but he held his ground. His eyes met the pianist's, full of hope and a quiet determination. He wasn't asking to perform perfectly. He was asking for a chance to touch the keys, to feel the music, and maybe to show a little of what he had learned. The pianist's eyes widened slightly. No one had ever asked this before, not like this. There was a moment of hesitation, a pause that seemed to stretch forever. The boy waited, barely breathing, hoping that his courage would be enough. Around him, the audience murmured softly. Some were skeptical, some were amused, but the boy didn't notice. All he could see was the piano, the keys shining under the light, waiting for him. The stage felt huge, the piano enormous, and yet the boy felt a strange sense of belonging. This was where he was meant to be, not just as an observer, but as someone who could create, even if only for a few moments. He imagined his fingers moving over the black and white keys, producing notes that could make the room hold its breath. As the pianist looked down at him, the boy took another deep breath. His mind raced with all the things he had learned in secret. Scales, chords, and songs he had practiced countless times. His small hands twitched with anticipation. This was more than a request. It was a dream taking shape, a moment where courage met opportunity. The boy's voice was soft but clear when he repeated, "Can I try?" He wasn't asking to impress anyone. He was asking for a chance to express himself, to show the music he had carried in his heart for so long. The pianist blinked, the surprise in his eyes giving way to curiosity. No one had expected this, and now the room waited, holding its breath, for what might come next. The young boy stood there, small and humble, yet filled with a quiet confidence that only true passion can give. The hall fell quiet, every eye turning toward the young boy who had dared to speak. For a moment, the pianist just looked at him, his fingers frozen above the keys. The boy's small chest rose and fell quickly as he waited, heart pounding in anticipation. He could feel the weight of the audience's gaze on him, a mix of curiosity, skepticism, and surprise. Most of the people in the room were used to watching professionals, trained students, and confident performers. No one expected a small boy in simple clothes to ask for a chance to play. But the boy did not falter. He simply stood there, his hands clenched slightly at his sides, looking at the piano as if it were the most natural place in the world for him to be. The pianist finally straightened, a small smile forming on his face. He crouched slightly to meet the boy's eyes, as if trying to measure the seriousness in his request. "Are you sure?" he asked, his voice calm but laced with curiosity. The boy nodded eagerly, feeling a mixture of excitement and nervousness surge through him. The room seemed to hold its breath, waiting for what would happen next. The pianist gestured toward the piano bench, and the boy carefully approached it, every step deliberate and careful, as if the floor might shake beneath him. When he reached the piano, he hesitated for a moment, looking at the black and white keys that gleamed under the lights. He had spent years practicing on a small keyboard at home, never imagining he would one day face a piano of this size and quality. His fingers hovered above the keys, unsure whether to touch them first or simply sit down. The pianist stepped back slightly, giving him space but watching closely. The boy took a deep breath and lowered himself onto the bench, feeling the smooth leather beneath him. It was larger than anything he had ever sat on, and the pedals below looked like they belonged to another world. He placed his hands on the keys, feeling their cool surface beneath his fingertips, and a shiver ran through him. This was the moment he had dreamed of, the moment where all the practice, all the hours of dedication, could meet opportunity. He started slowly, playing a few simple notes just to test the feel of the instrument. The sound was richer and deeper than anything he had ever heard, resonating through the hall and reaching the ears of everyone present. The audience leaned in slightly, some exchanging surprised glances, not sure what to make of the boy's tentative beginning. But there was a clear sense of potential in the way he played, a natural rhythm that suggested he knew the keys better than someone might expect. His small hands moved carefully, and the pianist's eyes widened slightly as he realized that this was not just a child experimenting, but a young musician with a genuine understanding of the instrument. The boy's confidence grew with every note. He remembered the lessons he had taught himself over the years, the hours spent copying songs from old sheet music, the scales he had practiced until his fingers ached. His fingers began to move faster, more confidently, hitting chords that filled the hall with a melody that seemed impossible to come from someone so young. The audience could feel the change. Murmurs started to ripple quietly through the crowd as people realized that the boy was not just playing. He was performing. The music flowed naturally, and it was clear that every note was deliberate, every chord carefully chosen. The pianist moved closer, his face a mixture of surprise and admiration. He watched the boy's hands dance across the keys, and he could see the same passion and understanding in the young musician's eyes that he had in his own when he first learned to play. The boy was not afraid to explore, not afraid to express himself through the music. With each passing moment, it became clear that the boy's skill was far beyond what anyone had expected. His small fingers moved nimbly, producing a melody that was both intricate and emotional. The audience was captivated. Some held their breath, not wanting to interrupt the flow of music. Others had tears forming in their eyes, touched by the unexpected talent before them. The boy's mind was focused entirely on the piano. He had forgotten the audience, the grand hall, and even the famous pianist watching him. In that moment, it was just him and the music. He felt a sense of freedom he had never experienced before, a connection to something larger than himself. Every note seemed to tell a story of years spent practicing alone, of dreams held quietly in a small room, and of the courage it took to finally step into the light. His heart swelled with emotion, and he poured it into every chord, every melody, until the hall seemed to vibrate with the energy he was creating. As he continued, the pianist's surprise turned into complete admiration. He had seen many talented students in his career, but there was something different about this boy. It was not just skill or technique. It was the depth of feeling, the way the music seemed to come from the very soul of the child. The pianist's hands twitched slightly, as if he wanted to reach out and play alongside the boy, but he knew better than to interfere. This was a moment for the boy to shine, and it was clear that he was doing exactly that. The audience, too, was caught in the spell. People who had come expecting a masterclass were now witnesses to a young boy displaying extraordinary talent. Some whispered to their neighbors, questioning whether they were seeing a miracle. Others sat silently, their eyes fixed on the boy, completely absorbed in the music. It was a rare moment where everyone's attention was united, where the beauty of talent and the courage to act created a powerful experience that touched everyone present. The boy's performance grew more confident and complex with each passing moment. He began to add flourishes, small embellishments that were not part of any sheet music he had learned, but came naturally to him. The audience could sense that he was improvising, yet every note was precise and meaningful. The pianist, unable to hide his astonishment, leaned back slightly, letting the boy take center stage. The hall was filled with a melody that was both joyful and profound, capturing the essence of youthful passion combined with years of dedication. Time seemed to stretch and bend around the boy as he continued to play. Minutes passed, though it felt like seconds to him. He lost himself completely in the music, feeling each note resonate within his heart. The audience remained silent, the only sound the beautiful music flowing from the piano. Even the air seemed to hold its breath, as if recognizing the rare moment of talent and courage unfolding before them. The boy's fingers moved with grace and confidence, and for a moment, the entire world seemed to narrow down to the space between his hands and the keys. Finally, he reached the end of the piece. The last note lingered in the air, a soft echo that seemed to hold the entire hall in awe. The boy lifted his hands slowly, almost reluctantly, as if releasing the music from himself was a difficult thing to do. The silence that followed was profound, broken only by the sound of his own breathing. The audience remained frozen for a heartbeat, unsure how to respond to what they had just witnessed. Then, slowly, applause began to ripple through the room, growing louder and more enthusiastic with each passing second. People rose to their feet, clapping, cheering, and some even whistling, moved by the unexpected brilliance of the young boy. The pianist finally spoke, his voice filled with genuine admiration and surprise. "That was extraordinary," he said, stepping closer to the boy. The young musician looked up, his face flushed with excitement and disbelief. He had only hoped to play, never imagining that he could leave such an impact. The pianist smiled, offering a hand of encouragement, acknowledging not just the talent, but the courage it took to step forward. The boy felt a warmth in his chest, a sense of validation and recognition he had never experienced before. For the rest of the session, the boy was given more guidance and attention from the pianist. Other students watched in awe, inspired by what they had just witnessed. The boy realized that his dream, long held in secret, had finally begun to take shape. He had taken a risk, asked a simple question, and in doing so had opened a door to a world of opportunity and recognition. The hall remained abuzz with excitement, but for the boy, the most important thing was the connection he had made with the piano and with the music itself. It was a moment that would stay with him forever, the beginning of a journey that promised even greater achievements and discoveries ahead. The applause slowly died down, but the energy in the room remained high. The boy sat at the piano, his hands still hovering above the keys, feeling a mix of excitement and nervousness. He had played once, and now everyone had seen a glimpse of what he could do. He realized that this moment was bigger than him, bigger than just a boy playing a piano. It was a chance to show the world what passion, practice, and courage could achieve. The pianist watched from a few steps away, his eyes filled with admiration and curiosity. He had seen talented students before, but the way this boy played, with both skill and heart, was rare. It was clear that the boy was not just playing notes. He was telling a story through the music. The boy took a deep breath and tried to calm the fluttering in his chest. He looked around the hall, noticing the expressions on people's faces. Some were still in disbelief, others smiled warmly, and a few had tears in their eyes. It amazed him how music could connect people in a way words never could. He felt proud, but he also knew that he could do more. This was only the beginning, and the boy wanted to show that he could play not just with skill, but with feeling. He started with a simple melody at first, letting the notes flow gently across the room. The sound filled the hall, warm and inviting. The audience leaned in, listening carefully. Every chord he played seemed to echo the journey he had taken to get to this moment. The long hours of practice at home, the small keyboard in his room, and the moments when he thought he would never improve. The boy's hands moved gracefully now, more confidently than before. He began to add small touches that made the music his own, adding emotion to every note. It was clear that he had not just learned the music, he had lived it. The pianist took a step closer, watching the boy's technique closely. He noticed the way the fingers curved naturally over the keys, the smooth transitions between notes, and the way the boy seemed to anticipate every chord with ease. The young musician's expression was focused, almost serene, as he lost himself in the music. The hall felt alive with every note, and even the smallest sounds seemed to carry a story. The boy's music was not just skillful, it was meaningful. It touched the hearts of everyone present, including the pianist, who had played for countless audiences, and yet had rarely seen such raw talent mixed with pure emotion. As he continued, the boy began to experiment with the tempo, playing some sections faster and others slower, allowing the music to breathe and expand. He remembered the pieces he had learned at home, the ones he practiced repeatedly until they felt natural. Now, he added his own interpretation, shaping the music in a way that felt authentic to him. The audience watched in awe as the boy transformed the piano from an instrument into a storyteller. Each note carried emotion. Each chord told a story of hope, struggle, and determination. People who had come expecting to watch a masterclass were now witnessing a performance that would stay with them forever. The boy's hands moved quickly and skillfully, covering the keys with precision. He played scales and chords he had once struggled to master, now executed with grace and confidence. Every sound seemed to fill the room, echoing off the walls and touching the ears of everyone listening. The pianist, impressed and humbled, could not help but smile. He had taught many students, but the natural ability and courage of this boy were extraordinary. He saw potential not just in technique, but in the boy's capacity to communicate through music, to make people feel with every note. The audience was captivated. They leaned forward in their seats, completely absorbed in the music. Some held their breath, afraid to interrupt the flow of melody, while others closed their eyes, letting the sound move through them. The boy could feel the connection with every listener, and it encouraged him to play even more boldly. He had started this journey quietly, observing, learning, dreaming, and now he had the chance to show what he had inside. Each note was a reflection of his dedication, his patience, and his love for music. The room seemed to shrink around him, leaving only the boy, the piano, and the music that flowed from his heart. He began to play a more complicated piece, something he had only attempted in private. His fingers flew over the keys, hitting chords that seemed impossible for his small hands. Yet he played with confidence, every note clean and precise. The pianist watched closely, amazed at the boy's technique and the natural flow of his performance. It was rare to see someone so young play with such skill and understanding. The boy's face was calm and focused, but inside, he was aware of every sound, every reaction from the audience. He had never felt so alive, so connected to both the music and the people listening. As the piece progressed, the boy began to add dynamics, playing softly in some parts and loudly in others, creating a story that moved the listeners emotionally. The audience could feel the change in mood, the rise and fall of the music, and they were mesmerized. Some whispered in amazement, others gasped quietly, and a few wiped tears from their eyes. The boy, lost in the music, did not notice the reactions. All that mattered was the sound he was creating and the way it made him feel. He had discovered a power in music that he had only dreamed of, a power to communicate without words, to connect with people through emotion alone. The pianist, now completely focused on the boy, took a step back and let him take the stage fully. He realized that this moment was not about him anymore. It was about the young boy, the courage he had shown in asking to play, and the talent he had revealed. The boy's performance was extraordinary, not just because of technical skill, but because of the honesty and emotion behind it. The music came from a place of true passion, a place that few ever reach. The audience was silent again, holding their breath as the boy reached the climax of the piece. His fingers danced over the keys with speed and precision, yet there was a grace and elegance that made the music feel effortless. Every chord resonated deeply, every note told a story, and the hall was filled with the energy of his performance. Finally, the boy began to slow down, easing into the final notes of the piece. He played with care and intention, making sure each note lingered just enough to leave an impact. When the last note rang out, there was a moment of stillness, a quiet pause as everyone absorbed what they had just witnessed. Then, the hall erupted into applause, louder and more enthusiastic than before. People cheered, clapped, and some even stood, unable to contain their excitement. The boy smiled, feeling a sense of pride and accomplishment that he had never experienced. He had taken a chance, asked a question, and had shown the world a glimpse of his talent. The pianist approached him slowly, his face beaming with admiration. "That was incredible," he said, his voice filled with sincerity. The boy looked up, his eyes shining with happiness. He had never imagined he could make someone of such experience and skill feel so impressed. The audience continued to applaud, and the boy realized that this moment was not just about showing talent. It was about courage, passion, and the willingness to take a chance. He had stepped forward when others might have held back, and it had changed everything. For the rest of the day, the boy was given guidance and encouragement. The pianist offered tips, shared insights, and spoke kindly about the boy's potential. Other students watched in awe, inspired by his courage and skill. The young musician felt a sense of belonging and recognition he had never felt before. He had not only performed but had left an impression on everyone in the hall. This was the start of something much larger than a single performance. It was the beginning of a journey filled with music, discovery, and opportunities that had once seemed out of reach. The boy left the piano that day with a heart full of pride, a mind filled with possibilities, and a determination to continue growing as a musician and as a person. The boy sat quietly for a moment, letting the applause wash over him. His small hands rested lightly on the piano keys, still vibrating from the music he had just played. The audience's reaction filled him with a strange mix of pride and humility. He had done something he never thought possible, and yet he knew there was more to learn, more to explore. The pianist stepped closer, observing him carefully, a smile of admiration on his face. He had seen many talented students in his life, but there was something special about this boy. It wasn't just skill, it was the emotion, the understanding, and the courage he had shown in asking to play in the first place. Encouraged by the pianist's presence, the boy took a deep breath and began to play again. This time, he chose a piece that was more complex, one that required not only technique but also expression. His fingers moved over the keys with confidence, producing a melody that was rich and full. Each note seemed to tell a story of dreams, hope, and determination. The audience leaned in, captivated by the unexpected brilliance unfolding before them. Even those who had been skeptical moments before could not deny the beauty of what they were hearing. As the boy continued, the pianist's expression changed from curiosity to amazement. He watched the young musician with admiration, recognizing the years of practice and dedication that had led to this moment. The boy's playing was not just technical. It was soulful. Every chord, every scale, every flourish carried emotion. The pianist realized that this child had a rare gift, a natural talent that was amplified by a love for music and a deep connection to the piano. He had seen many students struggle with the basics, but this boy seemed to understand the instrument on a level far beyond his age. The audience was spellbound. Some had tears in their eyes, moved by the power and purity of the performance. Others whispered in amazement to their neighbors, trying to comprehend the level of talent before them. The boy, however, was completely absorbed in the music. He had forgotten the crowd, the grand hall, and even the famous pianist who watched him. In that moment, there was only him and the piano, connected in a way that was almost magical. The notes flowed effortlessly, each one carrying the weight of his passion and dedication. It was as if the piano had become an extension of himself, and the music a reflection of his heart. He began to add subtle improvisations, delicate changes in tempo and volume that enhanced the melody. The audience could sense the creativity and freedom in his playing. The boy's confidence grew with every note, and he felt a sense of empowerment he had never experienced before. He realized that music was not just about hitting the right notes. It was about expressing feelings, telling a story, and connecting with others. He played with precision and emotion, creating a performance that was both technically impressive and deeply moving. The pianist took a step closer, his eyes fixed on the boy's hands. He could see the control, the skill, and the understanding in every movement. He noticed the way the boy adjusted his touch, the way he shaped each phrase, and the way he allowed the music to breathe. It was a level of mastery that was rare, especially for someone so young. The pianist felt a mixture of pride and humility, knowing that he was witnessing a talent that could one day become extraordinary. He also felt a deep respect for the courage the boy had shown in stepping forward, asking to play, and sharing his gift with the world. The audience continued to watch in awe, completely absorbed in the boy's performance. The hall seemed to disappear, leaving only the music and the emotions it evoked. People who had come to observe a masterclass were now experiencing something far more profound. The boy had transformed a simple performance into an unforgettable experience. Every note he played resonated with authenticity and passion. The audience could feel the dedication and heart behind each chord. It was a moment that touched everyone present, a reminder of the power of talent, courage, and love for one's craft. The boy's performance grew even more dynamic. He played with varying speeds and intensities, creating a sense of movement and energy that captivated the audience. His fingers moved swiftly and accurately across the keys, executing complex passages with ease. Yet, despite the technical difficulty, the music never felt forced or mechanical. It was fluid, expressive, and full of life. The audience watched in admiration, realizing that they were witnessing a young musician who could balance skill with emotion in a way that few could achieve. The pianist remained close, observing every detail. He could see the boy's focus, the way his eyes followed his fingers, and the subtle expressions on his face as he played. It was clear that the boy was fully immersed in the music, experiencing every note with intensity and emotion. The pianist felt inspired and humbled, recognizing the rare combination of talent, courage, and passion that the boy possessed. He had been watching for years, but this was a moment he would never forget. As the piece approached its conclusion, the boy slowed down, allowing the final notes to resonate fully. He played each chord with care, making sure the ending was as powerful and moving as the rest of the performance. The hall was silent for a moment, as everyone absorbed the beauty and emotion of what they had just witnessed. Then, applause erupted, loud and enthusiastic, filling the room with energy and excitement. People stood, clapped, and cheered, unable to contain their admiration for the young musician. The boy smiled, feeling a mix of pride, joy, and humility. He had not only played a challenging piece but had also connected deeply with the audience. The pianist approached the boy, his face filled with genuine admiration. "That was remarkable," he said, his voice warm and sincere. The boy looked up, his eyes shining with happiness. He had never imagined that he could make such an impact. The audience continued to applaud, and the boy realized that this moment was about more than just playing the piano. It was about courage, determination, and the willingness to share one's talent with the world. He had taken a step that many would not have dared, and it had changed everything. For the rest of the session, the boy received guidance and encouragement from the pianist. He was shown new techniques, given tips for improving his performance, and praised for his creativity and emotional expression. Other students watched in awe, inspired by his courage and skill. The boy felt a sense of belonging and recognition that he had never experienced before. He had not only played a beautiful piece of music, but he had also earned the respect and admiration of everyone in the room. It was a moment that would stay with him forever, a turning point in his journey as a musician. As the day came to an end, the boy left the piano with a sense of accomplishment and hope. He knew that this was just the beginning, and that there were many more challenges and opportunities ahead. But he also knew that he had taken a crucial step, one that would shape his future and inspire others. The memory of this performance, the feeling of the keys beneath his fingers, and the reaction of the audience would remain with him always. He had discovered the power of courage, passion, and music, and it was a power that he would carry with him for the rest of his life. The boy sat at the piano bench, his hands still trembling slightly from the excitement and intensity of his performance. The room was still buzzing with energy, and he could hear whispers of amazement from the audience. People were talking about him quietly, their voices filled with awe and surprise. The boy felt a mix of pride and humility. He had played with skill and emotion, and now everyone had seen the result. But more than that, he realized he had shown courage. Asking to play had been scary, but it had led to this extraordinary moment. The young boy understood that talent was important, but courage and heart were just as powerful. He began to play again, this time with a piece he had written himself in his notebook, a melody that had been in his mind for months. He had never shared it with anyone before. As his fingers moved over the keys, the music came alive, filled with the stories and dreams he had carried inside. Each note was personal, a reflection of his life, his hopes, and the quiet moments he had spent practicing alone. The pianist watched closely, leaning in to observe the boy's technique and expression. He noticed the way the boy's fingers danced across the keys, the confidence in every movement, and the way he allowed the music to speak for him. The boy was not just performing. He was communicating, sharing his heart with the room. The audience was captivated once again. The hall was silent except for the music flowing from the piano. People leaned forward, eager to catch every note, and some had tears in their eyes, moved by the raw honesty of the performance. The boy felt a sense of connection that he had never experienced before. He realized that music could bridge gaps between people, make them feel emotions they might not be able to express in words. Each chord, each melody was a part of him, and he could see that it touched everyone around him. The power of music, he thought, was truly incredible. The pianist stepped closer, his expression a mix of astonishment and admiration. He had seen many talented students over the years, but the depth of understanding and emotion in this boy's playing was rare. It wasn't just skill, it was intuition, creativity, and an innate sense of musical storytelling. The boy's eyes were focused, his brow slightly furrowed in concentration, but there was a glow of joy in his expression. He was completely absorbed in the music, and the pianist realized that this young musician had found his true voice. Every note he played carried meaning, and it was clear that he was sharing something deeply personal with the audience. The boy's performance grew more complex as he added variations and small improvisations, exploring different dynamics and textures in the music. He played softly in some parts, letting the notes float gently in the air, and then moved to louder, more powerful sections that made the hall vibrate with energy. The audience could feel the emotion and intensity of the music, and they were mesmerized. The boy had taken a risk in performing his own composition, and it had paid off. The piece was unique, expressive, and moving, and it left a lasting impression on everyone who heard it. The pianist watched carefully, impressed by the boy's ability to combine technical skill with emotional depth. He could see the years of practice and dedication that had led to this moment, but he also recognized the natural talent that made the boy's performance extraordinary. The boy's fingers moved with precision and grace, hitting every note with accuracy, while also allowing for subtle expression. The pianist realized that this young musician was not just following a script. He was creating, interpreting, and communicating through the music in a way that few could achieve. It was inspiring to witness, and he felt privileged to be part of this experience. As the performance continued, the boy became more confident. He explored the piano fully, using both hands to create harmonies and textures that filled the hall. The audience was completely engaged, leaning forward, holding their breath, and sometimes closing their eyes to fully absorb the music. It was a rare moment where everyone was united in their attention and emotion. The boy felt the connection with the audience, and it encouraged him to play even more passionately. He realized that music was not just about playing notes. It was about creating a shared experience, touching hearts, and making people feel something meaningful. The boy's performance reached a climax, a series of rapid notes that flowed smoothly and effortlessly, showing his technical skill and musical understanding. The audience was captivated, some gasping in amazement, others whispering to their neighbors about the boy's extraordinary talent. The pianist watched closely, recognizing the brilliance in every movement of the boy's hands. He could see the joy and passion in the boy's eyes, and it reminded him of why he had dedicated his life to music. This was not just a student playing. This was an artist sharing his soul. As the final notes of the piece lingered in the air, the boy slowly lifted his hands from the keys. There was a moment of silence, a brief pause as everyone processed what they had just experienced. Then, the hall erupted in applause, louder and more enthusiastic than before. People stood, clapped, and cheered, some whistling in amazement. The boy felt a rush of happiness and pride. He had taken a risk, shared his music, and it had been received with admiration and respect. The applause was not just for the performance but for the courage it had taken to ask and to play. It was a validation of his passion and dedication. The pianist approached the boy, his face beaming with genuine admiration. "That was extraordinary," he said, his voice warm and sincere. The boy looked up, his eyes shining with gratitude and excitement. He had never imagined that he could make such an impact, and hearing those words from someone he admired so much made the moment even more special. The audience continued to applaud, and the boy realized that he had done more than just play the piano. He had inspired, moved, and connected with everyone in the room. It was a moment that would stay with him forever. For the remainder of the session, the pianist offered guidance and encouragement. He showed the boy new techniques, suggested ways to develop his compositions, and praised the creativity and emotion in his playing. Other students watched, inspired and motivated by the boy's courage and talent. The boy felt a sense of belonging and recognition he had never experienced before. He realized that this moment was a turning point in his journey as a musician, a moment that would shape his future and open doors to new opportunities. As the day came to a close, the boy left the piano bench with a heart full of pride, hope, and determination. He had faced fear, asked for a chance, and shared his music with the world. He had learned that talent alone was not enough. Courage, passion, and heart were equally important. The memory of this performance, the sound of the keys beneath his fingers, and the reaction of the audience would remain with him always. It was a beginning, a first step into a larger world of music, opportunity, and self-discovery. The boy knew that his journey was only starting, but he was ready to face it with confidence, creativity, and a deep love for music that would guide him wherever he went. The boy stood quietly for a moment, taking in the applause and the smiles of the people around him. He had performed, shared his own music, and touched the hearts of everyone in the hall. The experience was overwhelming, but in the best way. He realized that his love for music had brought him to this moment, and it had opened doors he had never imagined. The pianist approached him once more, extending a hand filled with encouragement and respect. "You have something very special," he said. "Never stop playing, never stop creating." The boy nodded, feeling a sense of validation that went beyond words. He had always known he loved music, but now he understood that his talent and heart could truly make a difference. The room was still buzzing with excitement as people discussed the boy's performance. Some were whispering about his courage, others about his extraordinary skill, and a few were already sharing ideas about how he could continue to grow. The boy felt a mixture of pride, humility, and gratitude. He realized that this was just the beginning of his journey. The applause, the admiration, and the recognition were wonderful, but the true reward was the opportunity to continue learning and sharing his gift. Music had given him a voice, a way to express himself and connect with others in ways that words could never capture. After the session, the pianist invited the boy to sit with him and discuss his musical journey. They spoke about the pieces he had learned, the compositions he had created, and the hours of practice he had devoted to his craft. The boy shared stories of practicing on his small, worn keyboard at home, of struggling through difficult notes, and of dreaming about performing on a real grand piano. The pianist listened intently, nodding and offering guidance. He emphasized the importance of persistence, patience, and passion, reassuring the boy that his journey had only just begun and that the possibilities were endless. As the boy listened, he felt inspired and motivated. He realized that talent alone was not enough. Dedication, practice, and the courage to seize opportunities were equally important. He reflected on the moment he had asked to play, how terrifying it had felt, and how taking that small step had led to an extraordinary experience. It was a lesson he would carry with him for the rest of his life. That courage could create opportunities, and that embracing fear could lead to growth and discovery. The boy felt a renewed sense of purpose, a determination to continue improving, learning, and sharing his music with the world. The pianist also introduced the boy to other students and teachers, encouraging them to support and mentor him. The young musician felt welcomed and included in a community of people who shared his passion. He realized that collaboration, learning from others, and being open to guidance were important aspects of growth. The boy listened, asked questions, and absorbed every piece of advice, understanding that his journey would be shaped not just by his talent, but also by the people he met and the experiences he embraced. Over the next few days, the boy reflected on the performance and the reactions he had received. He thought about the smiles, the applause, and the encouragement from the pianist. He realized that music had the power to connect people, inspire them, and leave a lasting impact. The experience had shown him that his talent could bring joy, hope, and emotion to others. It had also taught him the value of humility, patience, and dedication. He understood that every note he played, every piece he composed, and every performance he gave would carry a part of his journey and his heart. The boy continued to practice diligently, building on the skills he had demonstrated at the masterclass. He experimented with new techniques, composed original pieces, and challenged himself to grow as a musician. Each day, he felt his confidence and ability strengthen, fueled by the memory of the moment when he had dared to ask to play. The experience had given him more than recognition. It had given him a sense of purpose and direction. He was determined to continue pursuing his passion, knowing that his dedication and courage could lead to even greater achievements. Months passed, and the boy's talent continued to flourish. He was invited to perform at other events, participate in workshops, and collaborate with experienced musicians. Each opportunity allowed him to grow, learn, and refine his skills. The pianist who had first noticed him remained a mentor and supporter, offering guidance and encouragement along the way. The boy's love for music deepened, and he developed a strong sense of confidence in his abilities. He understood that success was not measured solely by recognition or applause, but by the dedication, passion, and joy he brought to his craft. The boy also inspired others. Students, teachers, and audience members were moved by his story of courage and talent. They saw how taking a small risk, believing in oneself, and embracing opportunities could lead to extraordinary experiences. The boy's journey became a reminder that talent could be nurtured, dreams could be realized, and courage could transform a life. People who met him were encouraged to pursue their passions, overcome their fears, and embrace challenges with determination. As the boy continued to grow as a musician, he never forgot the moment when he first asked to play at the masterclass. It remained a defining memory, a turning point in his journey. He reflected on the lessons he had learned, the importance of courage, the value of dedication, the power of music to connect people, and the joy of sharing one's passion with the world. The experience had shaped him not just as a musician, but as a person. It had taught him resilience, humility, and the significance of expressing oneself authentically. In the years that followed, the boy's talent and passion continued to open doors. He performed in larger venues, collaborated with renowned musicians, and shared his music with a wider audience. But no matter how successful he became, he always remembered the humble beginnings, the small keyboard at home, and the moment when he dared to ask to play. That moment had set the course of his journey, and it remained a source of inspiration, motivation, and gratitude. The boy understood that true greatness came not just from talent, but from courage, perseverance, and the willingness to embrace every opportunity. Looking back, the boy realized that his journey had been shaped by more than just music. It had been shaped by his willingness to step forward, to believe in himself, and to share his gift with others. He understood that talent was a gift, but it was courage, dedication, and heart that allowed it to shine. The experience had transformed him, instilling confidence, purpose, and a deep love for the art he had chosen to pursue. And as he continued to play, compose, and inspire others, he carried with him the memory of that first moment, the first time he dared to say, "Can I try?" It was a question that had changed everything and set the course for a life filled with music, passion, and endless possibilities.